I started at Nagle Catholic College in 1998. I'd been at home having children and had gone back to, I wanted a part-time job, and I knew that there were no part-time jobs at Nagle. I hadn't worked at Nagle. I had been working part-time in a primary school, and I realised that I was not cut out for primary school teaching. I wasn't handy with the band-aids or anything else. So at one point, Brother Warwick Bryant rang me and said, would you like to come in for an interview? Because I put in an application. And he said, I won't offer you a part-time job, but I'll offer you a full-time job. And he obviously didn't like the contents of what he was offering me, because it was like one of those transactions. He slipped the piece of paper across the table and said, have a look at that and tell me what you think. And it was predominantly RE and English, two areas, I guess, that I had some strength in. He said, sorry, we try to never give people two RE classes. And I said, it's all right, I'll take it. I was slightly traumatised from primary school, even though the primary school was beautiful. It really was a beautiful school. So I started at Nagle in 1998, in the same year that my son started year 8 at Nagle. We were year 8 to 12 then. I loved being back in the English classroom, so I was a teacher, and thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to, at that stage, I was teaching Theo in year 8 as well, so it was good fun. Partway through that year, Warwick had called me and he said, what are your plans for the future? And I said, somewhere down the track, Brother Bryant, I'd really like to be a deputy. And he said, you can't be a deputy unless you do other things first. And he said, so how would you like to be the head of English? And I thought, come on, I've only been here for about 8 months or so. I said, I don't think so. I don't think that that's for me. But somewhere down the track, and he said, well, I suggest that you take the position that I'm offering you, because, there may not be a down the track. And I thought, oh no, what do I do about this? So I said, all right, I'll give it a go. So from 1999 on, I was head of English at Nagle. It was an interesting transition for me. I'd been in a smaller leadership role previously, but this was a pretty big deal. And I had 2 ex-heads of English who were in the department with me, both beautiful women, and I learned so much from them. But it's kind of a bit daunting when you're the new, young I was then, kid on the block, doing, hey, we've got to do all of this stuff. I loved my time as English holder, so I taught predominantly English, obviously, and one RE class. It was challenging, but our English results were pretty good, and at that time there were I was privileged enough to be able to teach some students who were outstanding. All of our students were outstanding, but some kids who achieved absolutely wonderful milestones with regards to their English courses have gone on to be, well, hopefully acclaimed writers, somewhere down the track they're writers, and that's kind of a pretty special thing. I used to joke every year to my year 12 class, or classes, some years it was 3 classes, and that was always interesting, because your first lesson is like, it's pretty good, your second lesson is brilliant, and then by the time you get to the 3rd class and that one day you kind of go, haven't I already told you this? So I used to say to my English classes every year, there's really only 2 things that I want from you. It was really about me, not about them. I would really like that one of you received an award for being in the top % in the state, and at some stage I would really, really like it if you did the entire scene from Dead Poets Society for me, where you get up on the desk. So, and they used to look at me and go, oh yes, all right. So that was never going to happen until I had been a holder for a while, and I had a young man in my class who is now a writer and writes under a pseudonym, and he was the first student that I had who, it had nothing to do with me, he was brilliant. The first student who was in the top percentage of the state, and it was an unbelievable moment. We keep in contact still. Speaking of that, and this was a proud moment for me, I suppose my last student was in my last year as head of learning area, and that was my daughter Alice, so that was kind of a great moment too. The Oh Captain, My Captain scene happened in the year when Brianne Wood was in my Year 12 class. Brianne Wood is now Mrs Negle and the Director of Students here, so that tells you how old I am. I walked into class one day, it was probably towards the end of the year, I would suggest, maybe the last lesson. And the class was unusual. They weren't behaving as they normally did, and they had changed the words of, and I still feel emotional about it, it's ridiculous. Oh Captain, My Captain. And they were stood on the desk. So I'm getting emotional, it's ridiculous. And so they recited it, but they'd I guess interjected me into that role, and I stood at the back of the room and I just cried, I think, for about 20 minutes. So that's great. So that's my most memorable moment. Okay, so then the opportunity came up to act as deputy, and if you recall from earlier in this interview, I'd said that was my role. I wanted to skip the head of learning area position, so I acted in the role of deputy, and I loved it. Opportunity came up to apply for the position in a full-time capacity, and I applied. I worked alongside Pete Norman at that stage, and he was a great mentor to me, even though he was considerably younger than what I was. The school's different then. We kind of split the years, odds and evens, and we looked after both pastoral and the academic side of the school. So it was a pretty big job, but I loved it. It was an opportunity to work in a different way with students. Then there've been iterations of the deputy principal role since then. Warwick left, Declan came, and Declan said, I want to change things up a little bit. So I was deputy principal, pastoral care for a while, and I love that. It's a very different role of being concerned predominantly with pastoral care of students. And I have always felt that is probably my greatest strength, and it is certainly the aspect that I enjoy. Also, it's the most natural aspect, I think, for me. Then there was the opportunity to be deputy principal curriculum. I think it's important that maybe you don't stay in the same genre for too long. You get stale, you get used to this is how my process is and this is how it's going to work. Curriculum was a challenge. I enjoyed it immensely. And then Rob came. Rob's our new principal. Well, he's not new anymore, he's old now. But he, partway through my tenure in the role of deputy principal curriculum, he said, what about we change things up a little bit? And he was a very generous man, because he offered me what I wanted to do of the deputy principal roles. He said, do you want to do the students role? Do you want to do the teaching and learning role? Would you like to do the faith and life role? I didn't believe that I could do the faith and life role with the justice that it deserved. And so it was a very big call for me. I had to make a big call between students and teaching and learning. Teaching and learning was new, and I felt that there was certainly a challenge there. So I said to Rob, right, I'm going to be brave and put my hand up and do teaching and learning. At this point in time, I don't believe that I'm perhaps as great in that role as what I immodestly say I was in the other role, but the students' role has changed too. And teaching and learning is an exciting place to be. You get to work predominantly with the teachers, but certainly with the students as well. For a while during my teaching career, when I was deputy, I didn't have classes that I taught And sometimes there isn't time, if you like, to that, but that's what I went into teaching for, was to be with the students. And I guess for me now, the greatest joy is going into my class. I only have one, but every day, because they are the reason why we go into the job, if we have gone into the right job in the first place. It's not a job. They delight you every year. They're different every year. Every year they are my favourite class. They have to be, because they're my only class. But they have such personality, and we get an opportunity to see the young people who are going to be our leaders, our top flight footballers. I've got a boy in my class this year, and I'm banking on that, who delight in, because they're year 12s, in making differences for other kids in the school. And what a wonderful thing to be able to be witness to those sorts of things. So I've been here for a long time. I often think, has this place become such a part of me that maybe I can't exist without it? I know that I can. But I feel very connected to Nagle. There are people who've been here longer than I have. But I'm passionate about this place, the people who are in this place, the people who make us very different to any other school in Geraldton, and I think to probably a lot of schools in Perth as well. We have kids who come back, and they're no longer kids, they've got kids of their own, just to let you know what it is that they're doing, or they send you an email, or they speak about you at an anniversary dinner. And I tend, there are special students that you don't ever forget, but for the most part I can just about remember most of the people who've been in my class, maybe not their names, and certainly not their married names if they've changed them, but it is a privilege to be in this place, and I'm thankful that whatever path has led me here has allowed me to stay. So we'll see what happens in the next few years.